Hello. For today's fake bake, we are starting out strong with an absolutely jumbo chocolate chip cookie. To make the chocolate chips, I'm using floral foam. I got this from the dollar store and it comes in mini shape, but I'm using the rectangular ones, which sometimes comes in a pack of 3. And a container of cookies for scientific research, of course. Cutting a bunch of pieces down from the rectangular floral foam, making them different shapes and sizes, but not a single shape I can actually name, nor am I sure they have actual names. Okay. Once I had more than maybe 10, I started coloring them an appropriate chocolate color. I didn't do every single side, leaving one as I didn't want to waste paint and I knew I would be hiding at least one side anyways. Also, it was just easier to hold on to that way. It got to the point where I wasn't even using a paint palette anymore, but rather just like raw dogging it and placing the paint directly on each piece. For the actual cookie bit, I'm placing a garbage bag down onto my table and then using a laundry basket to determine the size I wanted this to be and a marker to, well, mark down the size. Then with some water and a sprayer, I added it down. This is so the spray foam that I'm about to use comes off the garbage bag instead of giving me problems. Or as many problems, I guess. If you wanted an easier way to hang this, you could very well grab like a large wooden round from maybe Home Depot or your local hardware store and put that down instead of just spraying the garbage bag. But anyways, I digress. Ah! Oh my god. Using the spray foam now, I'm going to be starting at the outline and going around and around, also back and forth until I get to the center. I'm not doing this in any perfect way as the foam has a mind of its own anyways as it grows, and the cookies literally, well, generally aren't a very perfect circle anyways. I attempted to paint this a bit while it was expanding, which would have been easy enough, but I realized that if I painted it before it was fully finished expanding, that there would be unpainted parts, because it expands, right? Anyways. So instead I started placing my pre-made chocolate chips in, picking their respective spots, placing them carefully down, and then pressing them into a place and holding them for a couple of seconds to make sure they are actually secure. And And once the foam was dry to the touch and fully expanded, which you'll know because every spray foam container tells you how long it will take, or you could just leave it overnight like I did. I used that same color that I was using before to paint it and went to town, obviously being fairly careful around the edges of the chocolate chips. Some mistakes were made, but I fixed it. Did the touch-ups off camera. This is where it would be better to hang it if you had the wooden round. I just have mine resting against a wall, which works perfectly, but if you want to hang it from the wall or ceiling, however, I would suggest the wood round because it won't warp like this one did at the back. Though I'm sure you could still get away with hanging this one. Easy peasy. And the underside looks super weird. Next up is my Cosmic Brownie. I started with this piece of foam, not sure what it was normally used for, as I did save it from the garbage in a place I used to work, but I mapped out what size I wanted it to be and cut it down to that with my foam cutter. Oh my god. Then, to add some clay, the worst clay you can imagine, but I'm trying to get rid of it. This is what happens when you listen to the internet when people say Crayola air dry clay is the best, because it is not. This is the stuff that doesn't expand. It's not like the foam clay, it's just regular. But I bought 2 large tubs of it before I found that out for myself. The only way to make this even remotely easy to work with is 1, by adding a ton of glue, just like school glue or whatever kind of glue you have, before you even place it on a piece you're working on or just start working with anything with it. 2, you don't make the piece too thin because it will crack. 3, always add a layer of glue to it after you're done to ensure it creates almost like a top coat. 4, place a damp cloth on it. The slower it dries, the less it will crack, even though now the glue's on it. That's a whole tricky situation in itself, but you'll win some, you lose some. 5, this clay dries out quickly, even in the container. After every project, I add a little bit of water into the container that I have it in to keep the moisture in there. It's basically like slip at the bottom. Anyways, I rolled this onto the cutting board that I only ever use for projects, not for cooking, to almost take up the entire cutting board. So if I need to, I can cut the excess off, but I didn't want to have to add any more on. Grabbing the cutting board and placing it upside down and on top of the foam, and slowly and carefully beginning to transfer to the foam. Then using my rolling pin once again, I flattened the edges and made everything more uniform. Cutting off the excess as I said I would. And then found the halfway mark and cut the line through the center. Not literally cutting it, but shaping it more or less, which doesn't exist anymore apparently, but it was there. And those are the cosmic brownies that I know. Then placed my pre-made chocolate chips, which are made out of actual polymer clay from the dollar store, believe it or not, into where I wanted them to go. Firmly press down and wiggle them a little bit into place. And then took them out. With most of my creations that I make sprinkles with, I thought way too hard about the location, being sure that they look randomly placed, and then the same color isn't right beside the same color. So basically there's variation. And while that was drying, I began to texture the side, simply using the different ends of a pair of tweezers. Then with a very dark brown and a disposable sponge, I sponge the color on, being sure to get into all of those little indents. Once the clay was dry, I mixed up a custom brown. You can see all the paint colors I'm putting into it in this clip. And I painted over the entire top layer except in the spaces that would have those chocolate chips in them. Also being sure to add it along the edges because, like I said, this clay sucks if I haven't said that enough, and it shrinks a ton. But I painted over it with the paint, and if that paint happened to hit the foam, I would simply grab another piece of a disposable sponge and wipe it away. While the top was drying, I used a lighter brown and did a dry brush over the perimeter that I just added the very dark color to. And then finally giving it a seal coat. Making everything one cohesive piece, I mixed up some resin, epoxy resin, and added that to the top. As well as on each individual polymer clay chocolate piece, and then drop those back into the holes that I made for them. Using the same disposable sponge as I did before to paint and put the resin on the sides as well. Once that was cured, I removed it from the cutting board. Look at that shine. If I had had one this size, like real growing up, I would have grabbed it and taken it into the other room like dogs do with their treats, you know? But that is it for today's video, and hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye, guys.